With just under 1 week left before I take on the New York City Marathon, it is time to give my first impressions of my official race shoe for the occasion, the new Saucony Endorphin Speed 2s. Cheers y'all, how's it going? Before I dive into the review of my new Sauconys, this is I Run on Beer, so I would be remiss if I didn't crack open a cold one for the review. So I am gonna pop open another one of the beers from my Bruvana care package, that Beer of the Month Club. If you wanna check out my full video kind of breaking down what you receive, I'll link to that down below. But this is the Volta Hefeweizen. Again, all the beers from the box were featured breweries from Lexington, Kentucky. Every month is a new city that they feature. So I've been drinking my way through all of their offerings, but gonna give the Hefeweizen a try while we break down these Sauconys. So shout out to Bruvana, thanks so much for the box. Also some pretty sweet glassware as well. This is a very clear Hefeweizen. I'm used to them being a little bit hazier, being a wheatier beer, but smells delicious and smells very refreshing as well. And it tastes just as delicious and refreshing as it looks. So shout out to Bruvana. Again, if you are interested in checking out their Beer of the Month Club boxes, I have a link for that down below. But all of that out of the way, let's get to the important part of the video, and that is my official review or first thoughts of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2s, my brand new Saucony Endorphin Speed 2s. These were not sent to me by anyone. I'm not doing this for any kind of promotion. I purchased these shoes with my own money. Last year when I was looking for some new shoes, I just decided to try out the Saucony Kinvara 11s. That was my first ever pair of Sauconys. Fell in love with the shoes. If you haven't seen any of my reviews of those, just a great everyday trainer. Ran a few races in those shoes as well. So when I was looking for a new everyday trainer for this year, as well as toying around with the idea of a race specific shoe or a performance shoe, was gravitating towards Saucony just because my experience with those Kinvaras. And so decided to pick up a pair of the Endorphin Speed 2s, one of their kind of performance running shoes, as well as an upgraded pair of the Kinvara 12. So I'll have another video with my impressions of the Kinvara. But as I go through the Endorphin Speed 2s, you'll probably hear me kind of relating them to my experience with the Kinvara as well, just because those are the only Sauconys that I am familiar with. But overall, just like with the Kinvara 11s, have fallen in love with these shoes and am very, very, very excited to see how they perform at the New York City Marathon. So to kick things off, let's just go over some of the overall specs of the Endorphin Speed 2s. Again, this is one of Saucony's performance shoes. What I mean by that is it has their Power Run PB foam. So the Kinvara 11s that I'd run in, the Kinvara 12s I have now, has their Power Run foam technology. Every shoe company has their own foam, but the Power Run PB is specifically for their Endorphin line. So the Endorphin Speeds, the Endorphin Pros, etc. And is just supposed to maximize energy return. So very, very lightweight, but also propelling you forward with every step. So that's the Power Run PB foam. And then of course the Speed 2s as well have that nylon plate that runs from heel to toe to help you roll forward with every stride as well. So overall, the weight of the shoe is actually a little bit heavier than the Kinvara, as it comes in at 7.9 ounces. Still an incredibly lightweight shoe. And again, I'm assuming that that extra weight is probably that nylon plate. It's also a little bit thicker of a sole than you find with the Kinvara, a little bit higher stack height. And it also has some additional outsole on the bottom as well, some additional rubber coverage to give you better traction on those speedier runs. As with a lot of the shoes that I've talked about, and specifically the Sauconys, the upper is just incredibly thin mesh. I mean, if I kind of show you, just so you can see how much light is coming through on the interior of the shoe, there's very little material here and the light just passes right through it. Again, very minimal tongue. There's a little bit of cushion here at the top just to help it feel more snug to your foot, but the majority of the shoe is just this super, super thin mesh. Again, a little bit of foam here around the cuff or the collar of the shoe. A relatively stable heel cup, but nothing too crazy, just to kind of lock your heel into place. It has their FitForm technology, which again, if you watch my review of the Kinvara 11s, was something I really enjoyed. It made the shoe feel a little bit more snug for the first few miles, the first couple runs, but then that foam kind of gives way and molds to the shape of your foot. So you get a really almost like super comfortable, almost custom fit feel feel to the shoe as that foam kind of molds to the natural shape of your foot. So you've got that form fit technology, that foam kind of through the collar, the cuff here, like I said, a little bit in the heel, and then a little bit of rubber in the toe here as well. But a neutral running shoe overall, not a lot of stability or no stability at all, kind of worked in throughout that. As we move down to the midsole, like I said, that's that Power Run PB foam. Nice, squishy, super responsive foam. I'll talk about kind of my experience running on that so far, but have really, really enjoyed it. And then the outsole as well, I mentioned. I actually brought the Kinvara to showcase as well. So this is the outsole of the Kinvara. You can see that it's virtually all, this is just exposed foam, this yellow portion here, and then there's just a couple of kind of strategically placed pieces of that outsole or that rubber to give you traction where needed and to protect the foam on those kind of high contact areas. Whereas with the Speed 2s, the Endorphin Speed 2s, obviously a lot more coverage on that rubber sole. Again, these shoes are going to be taking a beating, especially for those longer distance and speedier efforts, and also just want to make sure you have great traction with every stride. I mentioned the stack height of the shoe is a little bit taller than Kinvara's. You got a 35.5 millimeter stack height in the back, as well as 27.5 millimeters at the toe. So an 8 millimeter drop or an 8 millimeter difference between the heel and the toe. Also a little bit higher drop than I'm used to, but again, the entire design of this shoe is just made to kind of help you rock forward. And again, I'm a heel striker anyway, so a little bit more heel to toe drop isn't the end of the world for me. And it's all just designed to kind of have you roll forward and launch off of the toe with every step. That design is actually coined Saucony's speed roll technology. Again, it's kind of the combination of the shape of the upper, the shape of the sole of the shoe, the shape of the bottom with that nylon plate as well. Just really, really putting everything towards just encouraging that kind of natural roll forward with every step, and then the foam kind of compressing and launching you forward. All in all, these shoes come in at $160 total, so pretty affordable as far as the kind of performance-based shoes goes. You see them get kind of creep closer to that $200 mark. Ultimately, that's one of the main reasons I also decided to go with the Endorphin Speed as opposed to the Endorphin Pro, save a little bit of money. And another thing I really appreciate about Saucony, they've partnered with Affirm, which is one of those companies where if you can't afford that $160 sticker price all in one, you can split it up month to month and just pay $40 each month interest-free. So a great option for you if you're looking to pay, get a new pair of shoes, but aren't looking to pay that kind of higher price tag all at once. But that is the specs and kind of just the basics of the Endorphin Speed Pro. So let's jump into my actual experience running in these shoes. The two things that I still really notice about the shoe is one, the comfort that comes along with that form fit technology I mentioned. It does lead to the shoes feeling a little bit more snug during that first wear, mainly just for these shoes, at least for the first maybe like 2 to 3 miles as your foot kind of works its way out and kind of forces its way into those little foam pockets, but it's become incredibly more comfortable and, like I said, almost like a custom fit feel over time. And then the other piece is just the feeling of the springiness of the foam. I will preface that also by saying I have a review of the Puma Deviate Nitros, which was the first kind of performance shoe I ever tested. Those ones have a carbon plate from heel to toe, and I mentioned in my review of those shoes that as soon as you put them on, basically, if you put any kind of weight forward or you lean forward at all, you feel the shoe kind of naturally just want to rock quickly towards the toe. I did not get that here, but what I did get was as soon as I step and I kind of start to step forward, the propulsion off of the toes is what I noticed more. So it wasn't kind of a natural inclination to want to roll, but it was once my foot started to roll, it just felt like the shoe wanted to push forward, if that makes sense. It's hard to describe. It's definitely a unique feeling, but felt it especially when I was running the Smutty Nose half marathon to give these kind of their first trial run in a race setting. And also on my 20 miler, I took these out for another run just to make sure that I was 100% certain I wanted to have these on my feet for the New York City Marathon. And they performed with flying colors in both of those tests. If you didn't watch my Smutty Nose recap, I set a massive PR for myself when I just went out to kind of have a fun run and ended up feeling amazing. Decided to push the pace and shaved about 4 minutes off of my PR. So a huge PR for me again. Who knows how much of that is attributed to the shoes, but my legs felt great throughout the run. The paces that I thought were gonna be hard to maintain felt a lot easier to maintain than I was expecting. Again, I think part of that that was just underestimating my fitness level going into the run, but I do think the shoes just felt so good. And again, I felt like I was able to conserve energy throughout the race, even as I started to push the pace a little bit. So that's kind of the overall feeling of the shoe, and the foam is incredibly springy. It's even still like thin enough, or I guess soft enough, that you can feel the contact with the ground, which is something that I really appreciate. But then as you roll forward, you just feel it kind of wanting to push you faster and helps you maintain those faster paces a little bit easier. At least that's kind of my personal experience so far. And then the only other things that I might mention that I've noticed this early in testing the shoes, I think I have about 40 miles total on them so far. So really just my 20 miler, the Smutty Nose half, and then some runs here and there. I mentioned kind of the form fit technology, but specifically in the heel, with some shoes that I've tested over the last year, I have tended to get a little bit of heel slippage in the back, which tends to generate blisters and just irritate the back of my foot. Not the case at all here. The heel kind of like dips back. I don't know, it's hard to see, but you have the foam pad here at the top, that form fit foam, but then it's much more bare or kind of open at the bottom. So your heel fits in nice and snug in the back, and then the foam kind of locks around the top of the ankle or right above the heel to hold everything in place. It's incredibly comfortable, but like I said, also just keeps my foot locked in place. So I'm not experiencing any of that heel slippage, no issues with blisters or anything like that. And then the other big thing too is just on the bottom of the shoe, the additional outsole. I have especially appreciated this, taking these out in some somewhat inclement weather. You just get a lot better traction on these shoes and don't have to worry as much about the wear and tear that they're gonna take, because again, you have a little bit more protection, a little bit more coverage with this outsole as opposed to the more minimalist approach that they have in the Convaras. But overall, like I said, only 40 miles on these shoes so far, but I am loving what I've been experiencing so far. As I mentioned, I think the biggest thing was just with that experience running the Smutty Nose half marathon, how fantastic my legs felt. That was really the first run that I took these shoes out on, the first kind of trial run, and really put them to the test, pushing my pace to new limits that I was not expecting to do on that day, but my legs just felt so good within the first few miles of that run that I just decided to keep pushing and keep pushing. And along with my shoes or my legs feeling great throughout the run, even in those later miles, also felt great afterwards. Again, a lot of that contributes to my training, my legs being in good shape, but I do just feel like my legs and my feet especially were much more comfortable in these shoes. And the shoes, I think, were doing some of that work that might be absorbed by my legs or my feet, especially as I mentioned in the later miles of that race. So I was able to maintain those higher paces for longer than I was expecting, was able to go a lot faster than I was anticipating. And I attribute a lot of that to just the comfort of the shoe and again, how good I was feeling. So really enjoying these shoes so far. Their next big test is going to be the New York City Marathon. Again, I'm going into this race not really sure exactly what pace I want to push myself to. Gonna start conservative and then see how I'm feeling. So hopefully, if it's anything like Smutty Nose, I'll be feeling really good throughout those early miles, throughout the first half of that race, and maybe be able to turn it on a little bit in the second half. We will see, but I will surely be back with another review of the shoe after 100 miles, just how it's holding up and how I enjoyed it through the New York City Marathon. But that's just some initial thoughts, kind of my first reaction to the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2s. Really loving the shoe. A relatively affordable option if you're looking for a more kind of performance-based shoe but don't want to shell out all the money for a carbon plate. I think this is an excellent option, and also fantastic just for those longer runs that you're doing in training and the speed work that you're doing in training as well. A great shoe to get your hands on, and you have the option, like I said, purchasing it if you want to just do the full price $160, or if you want to break it into those interest-free payments over a couple months as well. So an excellent shoe, really loving it. I think I may slowly be becoming a Saucony convert because I am loving all of the shoes that I have tried of theirs so far. So Saucony, if you want to send me any other shoes to test, I would be happy to do so. But really enjoying the shoes that I bought for myself so far. So Saucony Endorphin Speed 2s, check them out, and you will see these shoes next on my feet out at the New York City Marathon this coming weekend. Cheers.